Now, the Penn State Football Tailgate Show on 99.5, 107.5 The Bus, Bigfoot Country Legends, and simulcast on the Blue White Illustrated YouTube channel. Now, here's Thomas Frank Carr and Landon Tengwall.
How's everybody feeling out there? Welcome to the 2024 Whiteout. I'm Thomas Frank Carr, Landon Tengwall with me for the Penn State Football Tailgate Show. Welcome. How are you feeling, Landon? And then more importantly, how are Penn State fans out there feeling tonight? Biggest game of the year, but on Peacock after a loss to Ohio State. It kind of feels like you can't just have nice things. It just feels that way. But also could be an awesome night. So where are you starting the evening right now, Landon?
Yeah, I think the vibes out here, they're a little bit lower than it was last week, T. Frank. You could feel it in the air last week.
It was intense.
It really was. I've never experienced anything like it here in State College, but it's still a good vibe out here. I was around the tailgates, testing it out. The fans seem like they're ready to go.
Yeah.
A lot of Washington fans out here. I will tell you, it's impressive. I don't know if people are traveling from Washington, which would be an insane plane ride to come out here just for the weekend. But hey, credit to their fan base. It seems like they have a supportive bunch. So I think it's going to be a good game. I think the fans are going to get into it and be a factor in this game as they have been in past whiteouts.
I was not running up Atherton this week. I was driving up Atherton, and my wife drops me off in front of the creamery, and there was a family walking up Atherton wearing Washington gear, and I thought, you didn't make an 8-hour trip out here for a night game, did you? I don't know what that does to the sleep schedule. That is amazing, and there are a good number of Washington fans out there, so hopefully they're having a great time. Hopefully they're seeing great Penn State hospitality here in Happy Valley, but it is a night game in November, and we are ready for it with Penn State football taking on Washington later tonight at 8 p.m. Mentioned at the beginning, there has been a conversation all week long from head coach James Franklin and from the media. Is this a letdown game or is this a rebound game? It has been asked all week long. So, Landon, I'll let you start us off with how much does that factor into the focus at practice and the actual execution of getting ready for the game in the idea of a letdown?
Yeah, it depends on how much you let it carry into the locker room. If you are able to shut that down after Sunday, you got to grieve the loss a little bit, go through it, watch the film and say, okay, where do we need to get better and accept what happened? But if you let it creep into Monday and then into Tuesday when you really start practicing, that is when it starts to really affect the next game, and it can roll over and be a domino effect. So that is where you have to have strong leadership. And I will say the good news about this year up to this point, it feels like at almost every venture we have been tested and we come out for the most part, obviously not last week, but USC tested, West Virginia, Bowling Green at home, and we've talked about it. I mean, this is a battle-tested team that feels like it has really good leadership. So that gets me excited for where we're at. We win 4 games right now. We win the games that we're supposed to.
Yeah. And
we have a home playoff game pretty much guaranteed.
And that's a wild place to be kind of with the conversation this week where Penn State fans, like Landon and I talked during the week, and we were both – he has a YouTube channel. What is it, Landon?
At Behind the Wall with Landon Tengwall on YouTube. Go check it out. He's doing film breakdowns, post-game, pre-game, all that good stuff. Shameless plug.
Looked great, by the way. One of the things that did well this week that I noticed just in the Penn State ecosphere was you discussing how Penn State got beat by Ohio State. But generally – people just kind of checked out this past week from Penn State football coverage. So hopefully this is something that we can have you back here for the show today. And hopefully you're here at the game having a good time. But that enthusiasm, hopefully, for Penn State fans, they get it back for this night game. It is very exciting when the lights come on, and it should look beautiful in prime time. So Penn State fans do get what they want. A good team, Washington, coming in to play in the whiteout. So just about the game now, what do you think so far, what you've seen of Washington from a high-level perspective?
Yeah, I think one of the first things that jumps out is their run game. It's something they have relied on all year, and they have yet to been held under 100 yards rushing in any game they've played in this year. So expect them to try to go back to that. They have a really good running back. They have a backup quarterback that they will bring in and do read option. They did actually a double pass, very similar to the one we did at USC, where we used Bo and Drew. They use both of their quarterbacks. So their run game that can be slightly dynamic if you allow it. But I think it's very similar to how we can treat Wisconsin. Now, they will pass the ball a lot. I think they passed almost 40 times versus Michigan. But at the same time, I think the key for Tom Allen and his defense, do not let them get the run game going and force Rodgers, their quarterback, to pass the ball. And I think that's similar. Like I said, we did that against Wisconsin. We made Locke have to throw the ball, took away their run game in the second half. Yeah. Wisconsin was pretty much toast. So I think that's a similar formula that we need to use for Washington, and should be interesting. I gave the stat on my Twitter. Check me out at Landon Tengwall on Twitter. As of today, Will Rogers has not thrown a touchdown pass in 28 days. Washington's quarterback.
Now, if my math is correct, and it never is, that's a month.
Yeah, it's a month.
Yeah.
It was October 12th.
Wow. That is a long time to go without a touchdown passing, especially. And that kind of talks to what you were talking about, a good run team. They're run-oriented. They like their offensive line. They try to control the game that way. On the flip side, I don't want to keep bringing up last week, but we have to talk about it because the offense scored 6 points. 50% of that came within the first 6 minutes of the game. So it was a dry spell all the way until the fourth quarter. From a psyche perspective, there has been this conversation of doesn't matter what it looks like, get a win. You mentioned win out, you're in the playoff. From an emotional perspective for the players and the fans, does the offense need to look really good tonight?
Well, here's an interesting question I have. If we go 3 and out on the first drive, you think the
lots
offense is getting booed?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, lots of boos.
Yeah,
for sure.
That's definitely coming in.
Yeah.
So I know. I think it's important that you come out and have a good drive. Everything I've heard from I just walked around the tailgates, and I think the number one thing, it's kind of funny, people always just ask me questions about the team. And the biggest thing is, how can we fix the red zone offense? How can we punch it in when we are near the goal line and stop settling for field goals, especially early on in the game? So let's see what Andy Kotelnicki has. Let's see what type of red zone offense he can scheme up. But obviously this year that has been something that Penn State's offense really has struggled with, was finishing off drives once you get inside the red zone. Yeah,
I actually wrote about that yesterday, BlueWhiteIllustrated.com. I did a deep dive. We're going to talk about some of this later on in the show about what's wrong with the Penn State offense. I think there's some pretty critical things there in the Penn State offense that are not functioning right now. Thank you to everyone here on the Blue White Illustrated YouTube channel. As you heard in the open, this is broadcast on the Blue White Illustrated YouTube channel and at 99.5 The Bus and Bigfoot Country Legends. Come say hi to us. We're outside of the Bryce Jordan Center ticket office on Curtin Road, just down the street from Beaver Stadium. Bama PSU apparently doesn't like the tone I'm striking here to start the show, talking about last week and the offense has to play better. Bama PSU says, oh my God, T. Frank was one of the fans in the stands mouthing off to Franklin. Listen, as much as that would be funny, that's the student section that you leave out the tunnel, the student section. I haven't been in the student section. I was just thinking about this because, Landon walks up. He's wearing white. He got the memo, right? He's here for the whiteout. I'm wearing blue and red and whatever just is going to keep me warm because I'm going home after this to do my postgame show. I haven't been in the stands since 2009. You look long time.
You look like the dude that yelled at Franklin. You look just
like... Oh, do I?
Yes, I think that's the joke.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, man.
He looked kind of like he had this kind of a similar hat on, it seemed.
Really?
Yeah, I think I could be wrong, but it looked very similar.
Somebody under the age of 40 was wearing this in the stands?
Yes, you're I don't know, I guess very European looking outfit.
Apparently, yeah. The only reason I'm wearing this is because I don't have another hat that looks presentable, and I am bald and it's cold outside. So
it is cold
I'm still
out
adjusting to the not having hair and it being cold. Although I saw people, as much as we're talking about, what's the ambiance, what's the stadium like? I saw dudes walking around without shirts and the suspenders, the striped suspenders. I saw multiple shirtless dudes out tonight. So there's going to be a certain section of the stands that is ready to go for the whiteout.
I've seen multiple people painted white, by the way.
Yeah.
A good number, I'd say.
All right. And you would know, you've been out amongst the people. Landon is a man of the people.
Yes, we have been out in the lots. People are still fired up. They're ready to go. Energy is high, could be higher. We're going to see what it's like once we get inside the stadium, 8 p.m. tonight, T. Frank. Probably the latest Penn State kickoff in who knows how long time.
Yeah. Well, if you notice to start the show on the YouTube channel, we had to bring out lights for the first time ever. Ooh. So this is, under the lights. Even this show is under the lights, as exciting as that is for everyone watching here on the YouTube channel. And for the people listening on the radio, tailgating, we've been describing my hat for 5 minutes. Excellent radio. Excellent radio. Yeah. For the majority of the people that are, it is what it is.
He looks like a British man, pretty much.
Yes, I look like I should be singing sea shanties. I almost wore my really oversized sweater that comes up like to my beard, and I was gonna get an old cigar, maybe some scotch, and walk in and start talking like a pirate. Anyway,
I'm gonna get a picture of you before you leave. I'm gonna put it up on Twitter. You next to the guy that yelled at Franklin.
Oh, don't do that. People will believe that.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Misinformation.
People don't think or look that hard. I've stayed unviral for a long time. I worked really hard at that. We're going to get to Landon's key matchups to get into the game. Talk about the stuff coming up tonight on the field. That's what we do, other than hang out and goof around here to start the show. We're off to a hot start. We'll be back with more after our Penn State practice update. Some good news for that Penn State offense. Getting some people back on the field, maybe? We'll talk about it next on the Penn State practice update here on the Tailgate Show.
Penn State's efforts to generate explosive plays hit a wall last week against Ohio State. While there's no way of knowing if different players would have seen the field or even made a difference in the loss, at least Penn State has them back on the practice field this week. I'm Thomas Frankar. This is your Penn State practice update. Want to know this information before Saturday, a few hours before the game? Join Blue White Illustrated right now with the promo code PSU1 for 2 months of that way you'll get insight into Penn State's practice as we see it happen live and get detailed reports with our premium content after the fact. We'll start today with running back Quentin Martin. The freshman runner missed the last 2 weeks of practice with an undisclosed injury, but was back with his unit on Wednesday evening. The team was already without primary backup Cam Wallace after a bad injury early in the season that ended his year. Without enough running back depth, Penn State only used its 2 back sets a handful of times in the loss to Ohio State. While matchup and situation play into those decisions, it's likely a relief to have a third runner back in the fold. Slot receiver Caden Saunders was also back with his teammates Wednesday night. Saunders has been dealing with a nagging injury all season long and was seen in a walking boot during the UCLA game and hasn't been seen with the team since then. That is, until Wednesday evening. However, word of caution here, we've seen this year's practice participation doesn't absolutely equate to game participation. Saunders practiced with his teammates for roughly the first month of the season, but never took an offensive snap despite fielding punts on special teams. Reading the tea leaves of the Penn State offensive line has also been hit or miss this year, but it's good news that Anthony Donko was back in practice. After a surprisingly good performance while dealing with multiple injuries against Ohio State, Donko was back as the team's starting tackle in practice. More importantly, the staff seemed to be confident he's on the mend. Swing lineman J.B. Nelson was back at guard for Wednesday's practice after participating in practice at right tackle before Ohio State. It at least means that the emergency plans don't seem to be in the forefront of anyone's mind. But what's the bottom line here? Most of the news from this week doesn't immediately impact the game coming up tonight. However, getting key depth players back for a stretch run into November and beyond is critical for a team that needs to find a new gear on offense. We'll see if they can hit it tonight, even if these players don't participate. Xander Tailgate Show next. November and beyond is critical for a team that needs to find a new gear on offense. We'll see if they can hit it tonight, even if these players don't participate. I'm Thomas Frankar. I love process fits. As much as I am bad at it, I love the rhythm. I love doing everything in order. And one thing that drives me nuts is when we have a commitment and we don't get a commitment video out. And when there's a commitment at 10 or 11 a.m. on a Saturday before a noon game, we don't get to that video. But there was a commitment this weekend. So let's talk about it now here on your recruiting update. Who is the latest Nittany Lion?
Gosh, it seems like so long ago, doesn't it? You texted
so full of hope.
So it's behind the wall here. We were taking care of that story in one text, and T. Frank hit up the other text and say, "Hey, someone just committed. What happened?" And the story was already up at that point. And it's very funny to see the separation of church and state here. But Matt Sieg committed before the game on Saturday, a 4-star industry safety from Western Pennsylvania, Fort Cherry. He doubles as a quarterback and a defensive back. He basically does everything. Fort Cherry, I believe, single A. They went to the single A state title game last year. Very small school, but big time athlete. Like, if you look at this kid, he's got size. He's he looks 12, yes, but he's
That's
got
a very
size.
old photo right there, just so everybody knows.
Yeah, and well, the new photos are not much. They don't age him all that much.
Oh, okay.
But it's okay because he's a really good athlete. He's a guy that's held a Penn State offer for over a year now. You don't offer too many kids in the Fort Cherry area. By the way, home of, I believe. Oh my gosh, I just lost it. Marty Schottenheimer. Sorry, I want to call him Morningweg, but I knew that wasn't it. Marty Schottenheimer from Fort Cherry. As well, but Sieg is 6 foot and a half inch, is coming up on 6'1". He ran a 4.43 at camp the year before last, last year, I guess it was, and really put up some really good numbers, put up some really good film, and Penn State offered him fairly early in his sophomore year. Kind of one of those guys that you had as a Penn State lean from the jump. You just look at a lot of the logical data points, and it makes sense. Pro Penn State area. Penn State's been very, very good in Western Pennsylvania. Pretty much have gotten who they wanted out of Western Pennsylvania in the last couple of years. This is a kid that they wanted. Nice little offer list. In addition to some of the regulars, you saw Wisconsin out there. Wisconsin was probably the other player in this. He was there for Penn State's win over Wisconsin, and then USC came along and offered him as well. So a lot to like about Matt Sieg as just a really, really good football player who backs it up with the academic credentials that go there. So I think it's a good pickup for Penn State. I think they need a really good safety class in 2026, and they're in on some good ones early. And by in on, I mean, like, these are guys that I think they're advanced in the process a little bit further. And Sieg is one of those guys. So Penn State continues in the class of 2026 with a really good in-state pickup. I'm pulling up the Pennsylvania state rankings right now, but I believe he's number 5 in the On3 industry rankings in Pennsylvania. So there's a lot to like there with Matt Sieg.
Stalker Chevrolet, will you get the Stalker advantage with the purchase of any new vehicle?
Welcome back into the Penn State Football Tailgate Show. We are talking my key matchup of Penn State, Washington. For me, it is Penn State's running backs versus Washington's front seven. Can we get this run game back on track, T. Frank? Because I think that is the backbone of this Penn State offense.
Yeah.
To start the year, I thought we were getting going on the ground game.
Yep.
First 4 games, we averaged 251 yards through the first 4 games. Back 4 games that we just played, so first 4 was West Virginia to Illinois, from UCLA to Ohio State. We've averaged 124 yards rushing these past 4 games.
Yeah.
We averaged 251 before that. So, I mean,
yeah,
a huge drop-off. Some of that is playing the level of the opponent, but at the same time, we've had injuries. We have been dealing with just, obviously, Ohio State shut down our rushing attack.
Yep.
So can you get that confidence back? Can this offensive line get back to being dominant and being that offensive line we saw against Illinois that just took over a game? That is what we need, I think, tonight.
Yeah.
To see from these guys. Let's see a explosive, a healthy Nick Singleton tonight.
Yeah.
And, you know, that is, like I said, that is what Penn State needs. That stuff that Kotonicki runs, all those cute motions and all that backfield action, it only works when you can run the ball. And Penn State has not been able to run the ball, so that is why the whole offense really has not worked as well.
Yeah.
You have to get that first, and then we can talk about the passing attack and the rest of it. So that is why my key matchup is Penn State's running backs versus Washington's front seven.
It's funny. I love throwing the football so much. Like, I don't have key matchups here, but I just think Drew Aller needs to get going. And that's where you can make some of those big plays because the running game has been struggling so much. And I went into the data. I was at James Franklin's press conference on Monday. He talked about this. You probably hear a little bit about it in the Coach's Corner coming up in a little bit. But the conversation about the run game, he mentioned the traditional run game, meaning the 2 running backs running not just between the tackles, but like running the football, not options, not moving the entire offensive line to the sideline so that you can run Nick Singleton on a sweep behind 3 tight ends in the middle of the field, getting the actual running game going. So I went into this, and again, bluewhiteillustrated.com. If you want to check any of this stuff out, if you're listening on the radio, you're here on the YouTube channel, you can use promo code PSU1 for 2 months for $1 to get access, and you can go read all the details. But Landon, I want to talk to you about this conversation. I want to get some idea from the offensive line perspective, the traditional running game. What does that mean to you?
Yeah, so I mean, like you said, what we have been doing, we've been doing some really interesting stuff. We've been doing tackle over, moving offensive linemen around, putting them at slot wide receiver, putting them in motion, a ton of stuff. I think when Franklin says he's going to get back to kind of just doing that classic run game, I think we are going to come out. We're going to run counter where we're pulling two big boys. We're going to try to run it down Washington's throat and just be more physical than them. They've had to come out to the West Coast. And honestly, I think that's funny. It's something that has not been talked about very much at all. They have to travel completely across the country. That was a really big storyline early in the year, and it has kind of slowed down a little bit. But they're coming out here, 8 p.m. kickoff. I think it's going to be hard for Washington to, be fully up for this one. That cross-country stuff is not easy. So I'm excited to see it. Should be interesting.
We're having a little bit of audio issues. I don't know if you can hear me on the channel, but Landon, please.
Yeah.
Hey, there we go.
There
I
you
can
go.
hear myself now. Look at that. Whatever, just hold your finger on that for the rest of the show. Whatever happens after that isn't my problem, but I just need to be able to be heard. So I apologize to everybody here listening for all the technical issues to start, but we're getting it worked out. The run game, the thing that I find interesting is when you talk about what Andy Kotelnicki is, the motions, the shifts, the window dressing, that's all window dressing specifically. The core of the offense, I asked him about this when he first got here after watching his film and what he did at Kansas, what he did at Buffalo, what he did at Wisconsin Whitewater. Outside zone is a very important part of this offense, and it is something where he uses that term distortion, kind of like my voice right now, trying to take the defense and move it one way so that there are openings and opportunities in another way. And that is really what's going on is the zone running game, the zone rushing game is not working right now. And because of that, the option game isn't working. So if you look at some of where Kansas got some of their explosive plays from Andy Kotelnicki's offense, a lot of this came off of quarterback options, quarterback run game based on the threat of the outside zone and the success there. So there's this negative feedback loop going on in the offense right now. The traditional run game can't stand on its own. It doesn't have the support of the option game because Drew Aller really isn't that much of an option quarterback to create a true threat on every single play. And then from there, the easy throws that generate explosive plays are not there from the RPO passing game and the play action game. So that's making the offensive passing game harder as well. Oh my goodness, I feel like I'm at the end of a marathon. My voice sounds like I'm in like the last kilometer of a marathon. So that's here's a good stat. Penn State has thrown RPO passes this year about 13 times in Big Ten play. They have gotten 85 yards. In similar competition last year, Kansas generated 13.5 yards a pass. They got 114 yards off of RPOs, which are no decision, quick throw. I mean, no passing progression decision. Not hard for the quarterback to. If this guy moves to the left, then I throw my receiver the football. That level of decision. So none of the easy stuff is working, and it's creating this problem. So I guess from your perspective, how do you fix the easy part so that you can get to some of those explosive plays?
Yeah, you got to get back to that basic, like I said, being able to run up the middle. I will tell you one thing this Penn State offense likes to do. Coach Troutwine, the guys in the offensive line room want to be able to run duo, inside zone. It's kind of the same thing.
Yeah.
But be able to run it up the gut and let your running backs get up there, press the line of scrimmage, make someone miss. And that's what we got to get back to. We have to get back to being more physical than the other team.
So I guess take me inside being more physical, because if you were more physical before, but you're not now, what's the difference there?
Yeah, I mean, it really is mindset, and especially on the double teams.
Okay.
I would say when you have a double team, and that's something we talked about. Anthony Donko, when healthy, and Sal Wormley were just displacing guys. And when you move a defensive lineman 2 to 3 yards off of the ball, I mean, you wouldn't believe the space that it creates for Nick Singleton, for Kaytron Allen to make a move off of that, and they can parlay that even into more yards.
Yeah.
So I think that the importance of that, getting that initial movement, can't be understated. And also, I will say this. I mean, the Washington defense really has struggled the past 5 games, and really since they got into Big Ten play, they have given up a lot of rushing yards past 5 games. every team has rushed for 160 yards or more. Iowa went for 220 on this Washington defense. So definitely the ability to rely on the run game. I don't want this to necessarily be in Illinois where Drew doesn't even break 140 passing yards.
Right.
But I also think it's an opportunity to reestablish that ground game where, I think even just the
threat of it going forward, the identity of it going
absolutely.
forward.
I think anybody watching the game, watching Illinois, knew what the feeling was coming away from that game. It was Penn State's dominated up front. Let's get back to that feeling.
It's been a fascinating journey to figure out the issues because initially Anthony Donko and Nick Singleton get hurt within probably 10 game minutes of each other. And so your two most explosive players, we talked about it here on the Tailgate show before, but it's been a systemic issue since that moment, regardless of who's playing right tackle. And we both think Nolan Rucci is a good football player and especially a good run blocker. It has been fascinating to see the level of competition change with that kind of you lose your fastball and things get harder has caused a lot of these, I would say kind of the snowball issue that we've seen so far. When we're talking about this particular team, I asked James Franklin after watching some of the film about on Washington and there's a Belichick and a Carroll on this team. So Bill Belichick's son, and I'm pretty sure Pete Carroll's son, are the offensive and defensive coordinators or defensive and offensive coordinators. So, checkmate, you got two Super Bowl winning lineages out there for Washington, but the NFL doesn't always work at the college level all that well. So, from the terms of how that front plays with 5 down offensive linemen at times, multiple up front, what are the advantages Penn State could find? Is that where you're talking about those gap schemes here? And why are those so susceptible on this level specifically to what we think is going to happen tonight in the trenches?
Yeah, I mean, we don't want to bore everybody to death, but I mean, when you come out and Washington loves a odd front, you can come out and be physical. That means there is someone, for the most part, over top of the center, and you allow Sal Wormley, you allow Venga Ioane to get in there and be more physical, move that nose guard off of Nick Dawkins and just really create some movement for the offensive line to get going. So I think, like I said, coming into this game, even just the untrained eye can look and say, okay, the Penn State offensive line dominated there or they don't. I think you can go through each game, and it's been pretty clear. Yeah. I think today is a day that needs to be a day of domination for them, because if it's not, I think you start to worry, and the Washington offense is explosive enough to cause a little bit of a problem for sure in the run and pass game.
So it's let's play this out. If they don't, and they have to, let's say it's fine. It's not like, oh no, they get 2 yards carry. Do you think the offensive passing game is back to a place where it could win the game for them tonight? Because we've seen them do that at USC. We saw them do that against UCLA. Honestly, that's how they won that game, was a couple of big explosive drives when they needed it from Drew Aller and the receivers. Do you think that there's a path forward where they can lean more on Drew or do different things in the passing game to take some of the heat off the run game?
I think they can just do better, just because it's not Ohio State's defense. There is not a Caleb Downs on why, and Caleb Downs, don't get it twisted, is the best safety in America. And that is what Tyler
Warren,
awesome
last week.
I mean, he was fantastic. That was one of the reasons Penn State could not run the ball outside either. Just watching the film, you just saw, and it was like 3 defenders right to the ball. Yep. And it was like, man, that is why we're so close so many times. That should have been huge gains, and we just couldn't get outside. But now you're playing a Washington defense that is a little bit slower, a little less talented than an Ohio State defense. So I think Trey Wallace and I think Liam Clifford, Julian Fleming can get more open. I don't think they have the same ability to take away Tyler Warren as Ohio State did with a guy like Ransom. And they really just did a good job taking away Tyler Warren and double teaming him. So I guess that is a conversation to have. Is there a little bit of a blueprint on how to take away Tyler Warren? But I mean, it's not really, they didn't really do anything special. You just put 2 guys on him. I mean, there's nothing that's.
Here's the other thing is, like, I think you did a great job with the film breakdown. And a lot of that, too, was they didn't have to dedicate anything to the run. So they just played zone coverages, and they had 2 guys around him because it's in his, like, that was just the structure of the defense. They knew where they were going. That's the thing last week is, like, they knew what Penn State wanted to do, and they didn't even have to, like, I guess a lot of times I think of double teams as like there's 2 guys on the line of scrimmage and they're like going to like beat him up on either side no matter where he goes. It was just like they just leaned towards Tyler Warren a little bit on these plays, and they completely suffocated the Penn State passing game. Again, talking about some of these, Washington plays this NFL style of man coverage. You know, they're not as handsy as the Ohio State defensive backs, and they play really simple coverages. So to me, from a processing standpoint, playing a lot of coverages that give the opportunities down the field, this might be more of a matchup for Andy Kotelnicki's offense, which wants to generate those explosive plays, because if you only have 3 defenders deep, there's a lot more room to run. Illinois did some of those things to take that away. Yes. So it's not like a 1-to-1 ratio here, but I just think that there might be more room to literally run in the secondary for those receivers and tight ends tonight. But you're right. If they come out with a similar game plan and they don't allow Penn State to throw to Tyler Warren and loosen things up, I'm having a hard time saying like, oh no, Penn State's in trouble at any point in these conversations.
I don't think you're in trouble, but it's just it's been hard to see other wide receivers step up. And I will say, like the catch that Trey Wallace made right before the interception, right before the half, I think it really got overshadowed. He made a fantastic catch. Drew put a little air under the ball. And I think a catch that, honestly, that we haven't seen anybody else make on the roster at wide receiver. It seems like Trey Wallace is the only guy that can do that 50-50, let me bail you out, throw it up type deal. And so obviously I think what happened right before halftime is in everybody's brain, and like, oh no, Trey Wallace isn't. And it was unlucky. And he obviously had another drop at 1.2, but I still think he is the most talented wide receiver. I think he is someone that can help Drew Aller out. And I was honest. I said on my show this week that if we cannot establish a true wide receiver one, or at least some guys that can get some separation and one-on-one coverage when Tyler Warren is blanketed, you don't win more than one playoff game. I mean, that's just the reality.
You're going to give him one.
I think you could
more than one.
I think you could get away with it against a little bit of a lesser team. But you start playing Alabama, Georgia, whatever. They have the athletes to be able to take away Tyler Warren if they want to, and say, hey, you got to win somewhere else. Can you do it if you're Penn State? It starts tonight. So where in the world is Amari Evans is the next part of the conversation. The guy who at the beginning of the season, we were having a conversation, is he the number 1 wide receiver? Because like bombs away every game. They're still running those plays, but I guess where is Amari Evans, and have they not been using him the right way or enough, or what is opportunity is half of this, but have the opportunities been there from what you've seen? I mean, he's made plays, and it felt like the first 5 or 6 weeks, it was like, yo, where's our weekly shot to Amari Evans? Right. We would take a deep shot, a pass of 40 or more yards to Amari Evans deep. And now, think the past 2 weeks, Wisconsin and since USC really, in Wisconsin and Ohio State, we did not throw a pass more than 30 yards downfield, 25 yards probably. When you don't stretch the defense, well, then they are less likely to respect you. The safeties start to come up into the box a little bit. Backside linebackers don't respect any type of slants, whatever. Like when you just don't have the ability to throw, well, the defense is able to kind of clamp down on the run game. And that is what you saw last week with Ohio State. So
the part that I find interesting, the goal line stand is also seared in everybody's mind from that past game. So people kept asking me on the Blue White Illustrated message board, T. Frank, what's wrong with the red zone offense? What's wrong with the red zone offense? Did a mailbag about it. And I said my knee-jerk reaction is they're running the ball too much. They're not throwing enough. And that turned out to be pretty true. They average 2.5 yards a carry in the red zone. They are grinding out everything in the red zone. But Drew Aller has seen more coverage against like passing coverage where you've got 2 deep safeties. They're not worried about the run game, not stacking the box in the red zone. Penn State still can't run the ball when there's 2 deep safeties. When the defense is saying, hey, we're in the red zone, you can run it, go for it. We don't care. We're going to stop you from throwing the ball because Drew Aller has 12 red zone touchdowns this year. And they still can't run the football. So now what are you going to do? Throw into that coverage again, and there's less room. So I don't know how the chicken or the egg there is. The answer you gave to begin this, and we could have been done in 5 minutes, is you've got to establish the run. But if you can't, like, what's the contingency plan, and how do you then generate more plays to score touchdowns in the red zone? And I would be the worst offensive coordinator in the world, Landon. If you were one of my players, you would be so mad at me because I would just be spamming the passing game. I would have no patience for the run game because it's just like, okay, you're averaging 12 yards a pass in the red zone. You need 20 yards. Go for it. But at the same time, you have to establish that identity. And if they're going to give you those numbers, you have to take them. It just feels like it's a losing proposition right now. One last thought.
Yeah, I just think it is the most important part of our offense. And when you're not able to get it done, it allows the defense to make you one-dimensional. I don't think that's a world you want to live in. I think the answer is, if you cannot run, yes, Drew Aller throws the ball 40-plus times. Obviously, that has worked in some games, and it hasn't worked in others. I do think this is a different Drew Aller that we have seen this year than years past. But at the same time, that's still not really a world. That's never been Penn State, the quarterback passing for 40-plus times. The games that you win are when you run the ball for over 200 yards and your quarterback has anywhere between 200, 250, a couple of touchdowns. You rely on that run game, and that opens up the rest of the offense.
We'll be back to talk more about the defense and what we think about that matchup tonight here on the Penn State Football Tailgate Show. I'm Thomas Rankard. That is Landon Tengwall. We'll be back on the Penn State Tailgate Show, driven by Blaze Alexander Family Dealerships on 99.5, 107.5 The Bus, Bigfoot Country Legends, and streaming on the Blue White Illustrated YouTube channel. It's time for the Coach's Corner.
Press conferences are boring, right? That's why we've set aside the most important stuff for you. It's Coach's Corner, powered by Your Cigar Den and Monte Cristo Lounge, with free, easy in and out parking for all your tailgating needs. Check out Your Cigar Den's new Casa Cuban Lounge on Colonnade Boulevard, next to Wegmans.
Undefeated no more. James Franklin and the Penn State Nittany Lions are looking to forget the 20-13 defeat at the hands of the Ohio State Buckeyes last Saturday. But as Franklin knows all too well, there are plenty of different pieces of the team's game that need to be fixed.
When you kind of look back at the game, for opportunities for growth, some things that we got to get fixed is we got to be more disciplined. We're giving too many yards away, or extending drives, or creating field position, and the margin of error and with teams like that is too small. So we got to get those things cleaned up. It's concerning when it happens on back-to-back weeks. So we got to get that cleaned up and addressed.
The sticking point from the November 2nd loss comes with the goal line possession of the Nittany Lions had with about 5 minutes to go in the fourth quarter. 3 straight run plays and 1 failed fourth down pass attempt were all Penn State could muster from the 3-yard line as its starting position. While some may think James Franklin doesn't hear the outrage some fans have, well, he does. And he knows what has to change with those possessions moving forward.
We didn't get movement. We didn't get movement up front. We got 2 of the better running backs in the country. You want to try to feed those guys and allow them to get downhill. They've done a really good job of it, not only this year, but kind of throughout their careers. I think that's the right thing to do, but I also think there's a piece where you can say in critical moments, you got to think players, not plays. And, maybe in one of those 3 downs at least, you got to make sure Tyler Warren touches the ball.
Penn State fans have been accustomed to the, we lost to Ohio State, that was our one shot at them this year response. But in the year of the 12-team playoff, that isn't true anymore. Penn State and Ohio State could conceivably play one another, maybe even in a first-round game on December 20th or 21st right here in Happy Valley. It's safe to say the opportunity is one the players and James Franklin are not dreading.
In today's college football, those things that you just said, they're possible. They're realistic, which I also think is probably cool about college football now, where that wasn't the case in the past. You'd have to wait a full calendar year depending on the schedule. Yeah, I think that's a cool thing for college football.
111,030 people packed out Beaver Stadium for a record attendance last week. Those with no affiliation to Ohio State left the weekend disappointed to say the least. But the season is still ahead of the Nittany Lions. Washington makes its way to Happy Valley for the annual whiteout game today. James Franklin is holding on to his optimism and passion and wants the angry and vitriolic fans to do the same.
Because everybody's taking ownership and everybody wants the next opportunity, and the next opportunity comes in Washington, and the more opportunities we handle like that, then we still have a chance to do the things we talked about in the beginning of the season, and what our fans want so badly, and what the lettermen want so badly, and the alumni want so badly, and what that fan was yelling at me walking off the field wants so badly. I totally get it. Again, you do not fill up 111,000 seat stadium without passion and commitment, and we appreciate all of that. Can it go too far sometimes? Yes. Should it be addressed? Yes.
That was your Penn State Coach's Corner. More for the Tailgate Show in a moment. More for the Tailgate.
Where do you want to go next, buddy? You want to go to the film study, or should we get into this losing conversation that a lot of people have had of late?
You put a lot of work in that. So let's get into the post-loss narrative because that's part of, the conversation here in the chat.
Yeah, so the first thing I heard, and it came from Penn State fans on the Lions Den message board and on social media, and then it came from Penn State players and coaches, is that Penn State cannot turn one loss into two. And I think there's some thought process that just because that happened in 2021 and a couple of times earlier in Franklin's tenure, that it's a trend or a common occurrence in the James Franklin era, and it's just not. I mean, Penn State has not typically lost consecutive games in a row over the last decade. And when it's had two losses in a regular season, which of course is something that Penn State fans know plenty about, it's always been Michigan and Ohio State in almost every instance. Not every instance, but almost every instance. And neither one of those teams are walking through the gates of Beaver Stadium on Saturday. And if Michigan was, you would be far less concerned about them than you might be in other years. So yeah. Just wanted to have a quick conversation about that and just the idea that, even though that is a common narrative and a common trend and a common thread of conversation this week, the results of Penn State coming out of a loss do not back up with, what so many are worried about. So I think I put it this way in my prediction, which we'll have over at BlueIllustrated.com later this week. But I didn't buy, as everyone remembers, I hope, the trap game narrative at Wisconsin. Yeah. And I'm not buying the letdown game narrative for Penn State this week against Washington. That was really my whole point to bring this up.
Yeah, but I think it's also an important point to make when it comes to the situation with what the messaging is and how that relates to fans. So James Franklin has to say that it has been a problem in the past, and he does not want it to be a problem again. And you have pointed out pretty clearly in the data that they fixed that problem, but the players aren't the same as they were in 2021. They're not the same as they were in 2017 or 18 or wherever those losses came that caused those problems. It is a continual refresh of the message to the players on the team that, hey, this happens if you're not aware. It's kind of like the conversation of coaches preach perfection and then they don't reach it, but internally they have an understanding of we'll never be perfect. We're trying to get there. And then the idea of perfection in college football permeates so deeply that you get the dissent and the anger and the resentment that you have here on the internet. So I think that this is as much messaging as it is narrative. And I don't see any way around it. Like, the coaching staff has to feed into the narrative so that it doesn't become a reality and keep their players aware of that. But for fans that think it's inevitable, Greg, just put up the graphic again. It is not inevitable. The 2021 conversation against Illinois, I understand you don't want any context. It's no nuanced November. The starting quarterback was hurt.
Our lowest price guarantee with 20 locations throughout Pennsylvania. Welcome back to the show. I'm Thomas Frank Carr, Landon Tengwall with me. We're talking about Penn State football and Washington. We can't go any further without talking about Jonah Coleman, the Washington running back, who is my size and Landon's weight. He is a crazy running back. He's like 5'9", 230, and he can scoot.
That little sidestep that he does.
It's good.
There's a couple of times where if you freeze frame where he's at in the backfield, it's like, oh my God, they have him dead to rights. And it's like, oh, no, this is a touchdown, 30-yard rush. And it's like, yeah, so this is someone that can talk about a game breaker. That is Jonah, for sure. So, defense is going to have to come ready. You're going to have to stay disciplined in your rushing lanes. When you have someone that can jump like that, I mean, just like feels like he can teleport, you have to stay in your lanes. You have to make sure, you have to trust that your man is going to make the tackle. Yeah. Tony Rojas, Zakee Wheatley, Kobe King. Yeah. Let's see what you got.
It wasn't a super clean game from them last week, but I don't think they were as bad until that final drive as maybe it felt like in the game. There were some things there that Chip Kelly was doing that, honestly, I think he outflanked the scheme in a lot of these situations where they were doing things that Andy Kotelnicki does, where you have everybody on one side of the field and suddenly then you're running somebody to the other where nobody is, and having, kind of easy running lanes from that scheme standpoint. But is this a game where that could be a problem again from what you've seen on film? Do you think that Washington has enough of those tricks to then highlight Coleman's ability?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think they do, and I think they have a little bit of speed out there at wide receiver as well. So I know. I mean, I think also, and they'll bring in their backup quarterback, Damon. Shoot, I'm drawing a blank on his name, but he is a really talented guy. And they'll run a little bit of a read option. They'll run a little bit of a special offense, similar to kind of how we do with Bo Prabula. When watching it, I was like, hold on, they run very similar, but it's actually more effective. It seems like when I was watching the tape, I'm like, oh, are they bringing their backup quarterback too? I'm like, all right, let's see. And I'm like, most times good things happen when they bring this guy in. He had a touchdown 2 weekends ago, and then was involved in a couple trick plays, that type of thing. So be on the lookout for that. I do think you want to be watching out for Denzel Boston at wide receiver. That is someone Rodgers only has thrown 13 touchdowns this year. 9 of those have went to Boston. So he wants a touchdown.
They have a number one wide receiver, Landon.
They have a number. When you look at the stat sheet, like even before I turn on the film,
it feels good, right?
Yeah, even before I turn on the film, I look and it's like, oh, okay. They have a number one guy at wide receiver, and my instant thought, okay, AJ Harris, who's going to step up? I don't. You look at us, and they say, okay, Tyler Warren. But when Tyler Warren's at tight end in the backfield, that type of thing, we need other people to win on the outside. So let's,
Yeah, the slot receiver number 5 is pretty good as well. Another guy that I think, at least from a yardage perspective and from a targets perspective, looks like he's a threat out there. When we were talking earlier this week, I've said this a couple times now. It reminds me a little bit, their passing game reminds me a little bit of Illinois. Will Rogers is a good enough quarterback, good college quarterback, and they've got some good receivers to throw to, but... So I know you've got some notes about the other half of that when you don't give him his number one read and you don't have, you maybe do put some pressure on Will Rogers. Is this a game where Penn State might get another pick 6? Is this a game where they get another defensive turnover? What have you seen and what do you think of Rogers?
Yeah, I think like you said, he is efficient. I think he is somewhere put him, think about Braden Locke. I think he's a little bit better than Braden Locke. I think he is worse than who's the quarterback for Illinois? Luke Altmaier.
Oh, Luke Altmaier,
I think he's somewhere in between those two. He's an efficient quarterback that I think also will make a mistake eventually. You can kind of trick him into it. Think about Locke when he just threw it right to Jalen Reed. I think that is a play sometimes that Rodgers, you can see him make. And it's like, okay, every once in a while, it's like, okay, what kind of throw was that? But for the most part, he is a good quarterback. But he has been definitely under a lot of distress these past couple games. 10 sacks in the last 4 games. So, I mean, overall, just defensive lines consistently getting after Rodgers, and that is what can hurt a offense, especially you start to get sacks, you're behind the sticks, that type of thing, and the offense starts to kind of sputter a little bit. So let's see if Penn State can get home. Obviously, Abdul Carter, who I think really had a great game. He was overshadowed just by the fact we didn't win, and it was
2 sacks, and one of them was really clean.
A couple TFLs too. Like he was out there, and he was like good pass rush moves. Truly, it looked like he came on, and now I don't know. Denied Dennis Sutton. Let's see how much we see from him. But at one point, it was leading the whole NCAA in tackles for loss. So hopefully, getting him back and shutting down their run game. Let's see. But I think this is a Penn State defensive line that has an opportunity tonight to be disruptive against a Washington offensive line that has been mediocre at best.
Yeah, and that's another one of those situations we thought maybe last week you would get an opportunity for something from the interior as well. If you've got some pass rush on the outside, you get something from Zane Duran on the inside, quickness and his ability to move around on the interior. I think it's a little more likely from what I saw from those offensive linemen this week. Those guards and tackles, they move pretty well, but there's a lot of heads leaning into the block. There's a lot of your head down, not looking. A lot of guys that are diving at the blocks more so than having the right technique. So that pressure, though, hasn't been consistent this year. And I do think I was defending those guys early in the year because the scheme had changed and it was less of a pressure environment. They weren't getting as many clean one-on-ones as they were with Manny Diaz's defense. But at this point in the year, I think it just is what it is. They're not the unit maybe we were expecting. A step from Denai Dennis Sutton even before the injury. Abdul Carter being unblockable. He's been good. I think he's impressed me because I had a lower threshold for where I expected of him. But is this a unit that can week in and week out generate pressure if a team decides not to be afraid of them?
Yeah, and I think for the most part, when you watch every game, it was like, okay, their emphasis was still to get the ball out quickly.
Yeah.
I mean, that was for the most part of Illinois, Bowling Green, Wisconsin, everybody. It was get the ball out quick. Don't let the defensive line get after you. And it didn't really feel like that was an emphasis last year. and we had a lot of sacks. And obviously, we do not have the same type of production as we were getting last year. But I still think it is, you've seen Zane Durant getting back there. You see Jalen Reed when he is lined up in and around the line of scrimmage.
Yeah.
He is a very good pass rusher. So I think this is a game where, like I said, we said we're going to run the ball. And sometimes he will want to get that ball out quick. Keep Jalen Reed down there. Let him play that line position where I think he can be most impactful when he's around the ball.
Yeah. Michael McCullen here, the Beard Father on the Blue White Illustrated YouTube channel. He's in the chat. He asks, Landon, as a former big-time recruit, how does the environment factor into decision to commit to Penn State? This is the biggest recruiting weekend of the year. We've been covering it all week long. Ryan Snyder's done a great job at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com. What do you think? Like, how did this play into it for you? And then, what's the reaction to, because everyone thinks win-loss is important, but what is like the most impressive or thing that stays with you the longest if you're a recruit?
Yeah, it's just being in the whiteout. And I'll say this, I remember 2019, I came up and I was my junior year of high school. So I was committing 6 months later. And it was like, I was already ready to come to Penn State. If you kind of knew, you knew. But that sealed the deal. I'll never forget just standing there for the Mo Bamba game and the timeout.
Yeah,
and I was just silent. I wasn't
Yeah.
screaming, but I was just standing there looking at the crowd and the reaction and how the players fed off of the fans. And it was like, wow, okay, this is a special place, somewhere that I would want to play. And obviously that it made the decision kind of for me. But I think that night was pretty impactful for sure. And I think it's impactful for a lot of guys. Just like I said, to see that support from a fan base means a lot to these guys. So obviously that's why, things like last week obviously hurt a little bit, but then you have something like this, allow the fans to get back involved and show their support for this team, because it really is some of the best fans out there. Fun fact, that's the night I met Nick Dawkins, who's now my, pretty much one of my best friends, starting center for the Penn State Nittany Lions. Yeah,
nice.
Met him for the first night in 2019 at the Michigan Whiteout. So good time. Yeah.
Yeah, way back in 2019, the
Long
world
time.
was a different place.
Oh, it was way
Actually, that's true. Like, believe it or not, that even though it wasn't that long ago. I think you make a good point. James Franklin has mentioned this multiple times, and he said in a lot of his answers this week of the opponent matters. And a lot of the people's opinions, maybe about the defense or about the offense, are currently shaded by what happened last week and how things played out. So the defense overall has been good against the run. I would expect them to have a good opportunity to shut down a good running attack here. Do they need it? Like, is there a psyche thing about that, of especially for a defense? And we talk about establishing the run, and you said that's a mentality thing, and like the offense wants to establish the run, and the defense, I imagine, wants to stop the run. To, like, you're not going to get anything is how that feels. Like, you can't have this and we won't give you that. How important is that for them to play well tonight, to kind of not let those things creep back into their mind about how things went last week?
Yeah, I think especially this defensive line that has taken over some games, especially more so in the second half.
Yeah.
That is how we need them to come out, how they've been playing in the second half all year, except for Ohio State, because it felt like obviously now you have to bounce back. That final drive where Ohio State was on the 1 yard line and reeled off 10 rushes of a mixture of 7 to 10 to 12 yard
Let's
gains.
talk about that for a second. What did you see? What did you feel? I'm asking you a lot of emotion questions.
I mean, look,
because we went into that game talking about legacy, and here we are on the other game, the other side going, well, that didn't go the way we thought.
See, Frank, you're on the 1 yard line like that coming out, like you still have an opportunity, but it felt like the players felt like it was already over. I mean, just watching how they were able to run the ball. And Ohio State came out and it was like, yo, let's finish this thing.
Yeah,
that's
4 yards on a quarterback sneak.
Yeah, and 4 yards on a quarterback sneak to start off, give you all the room, and then just 9 more straight runs to finish off the game.
That, to me, I don't go into that kind of stuff because I respect the football players to not question their effort or their pride or any of the things that make them somebody that wants to be on the field. That felt like one of those things where that was a gut punch. We'll be back here on the Penn State Football Tailgate Show, powered by 99.5 The Bus, 107.5 The Bus, and Bigfoot Country Legends, streaming on the Blue White Illustrated YouTube channel.
It's more than just football at Penn State. It's more than just football at Penn State. Here's This Week in Penn State Sports, brought to you by Bobby Rahal Lexus in Lewistown. Get ready to experience luxury like never before at Bobby Rahal Lexus of Lewistown. We are Nittany Valley's award-winning Lexus dealership at 425 Electric Avenue. Visit us on the web at BobbyRahalLexusofLewistown.com.
As the sixth best team in college football playoff rankings gets set to kick on off, the hoop season has already tipped off. The Lady Lions started their basketball action on Monday with a big-time win, taking down the Bucknell Bison 90-68. Mariah Murray led all scorers with 28 points, going 8 for 16 for 3. Mo Murray was not the only big contributor on the court, as newcomer Gracie Merkel rang in her first Lady Lions game with a 21-point, 13-rebound, 4-block performance. Carolyn Keeger's squad continued their rampage with a smashing 89-57 victory over Canisius on Thursday. Gracie Merkel took the reins in this one with a 20-point, 6-rebound, 3-block performance to lead the charge. The Lady Lions are back in action on Sunday at 1 p.m. at home in the BJC against Duquesne. Penn State men's basketball also got off to a hot start, taking down the Binghamton Bearcats in their first game of the season on Monday. Forward Zach Hicks led the way, putting up 22 points on 9 for 12 shooting, 4 from 6 for 3. Incoming transfer Yannick Conan Niederhauser dropped 16 points, 7 rebounds, and 2 blocks to lead the charge down low. Returners Ace Baldwin Jr. and Nick Kern each added in a quartet of assists. The Nittany Lions also took on UMBC last night at the Bryce Jordan Center. Penn State women's volleyball is looking to continue their near-perfect season with a 3-7 matchup against Wisconsin. The match in Madison should be wrapping up around the time you hear me talking right now. The women's volleyball team will have 6 matches remaining after their game today, 4 at home and 2 more on the road. That was This Week in Penn State Sports. Back to the Tailgate Show in a moment.
Plays out.
It is the Whiteout 2024. People in the chat are still mad about the Peacock thing. I am with you on that in terms of how you feel about this being.
I only warned you guys like in May that was a chance, but you know.
So
anyway,
yeah, another reason you should be on the message board talking to Ryan, because he's got a beat on all of these television things as we lead up into the 2024 season, and then of course when we get closer to game day. But on the field. We have our predictions coming up here at the end, but Fitz, what do you think about Washington? I think there's a certain contingent of people that are just, they don't know about Washington. And when you don't know about something, you're like, I don't know, watch out for this team. And then there's another contingent of people that say, yeah, they lost everybody. They're not any good. As always, the answer is somewhere in between. What did you find studying them this week?
The answer's mostly at home. Like, this is a team that's been good at home. They've been, I wouldn't say short of terrible on the road. Like, they gave up 40 points to Iowa on the road. 40 points to Iowa in one game. Yeah, I mean, I think there's talent there. I think it's a typical team that's been picked apart by the portal, by the coaching changes and things like that. But to their credit, I think they've really responded very well. Like that Jed Fish has them playing, I think, probably as well as you can hope in that point. They beat Michigan, of course. Michigan probably not as diverse in the offensive attack as a lot of the teams that they play, but you know, they got a good win over USC. How many times am I going to say that? Good win over USC. Everybody's getting over USC apparently, including Penn State. But no, I think it's very Jekyll and Hyde. They've got some good numbers, but at the same time, the home road split is tough to get over, especially when you're going into a whiteout at night in Penn State. Yeah,
Ryan, what do you think about Washington and what you saw from them, either from the data or what you saw of them leading into the game?
Certainly have been picked apart with some injuries, but transfers and all that stuff from last year. But there are certainly some quality players. I think Jonah Coleman is a quality back, averaging like 6 yards per carry right now, somewhere along those lines. And they're two wide receivers. I mean, is it Denzel Boston and Giles Jackson? T. Frank, I'm not sure if you.
Boston, just from what I saw, Boston and then the tight end are the two players that I think have the most potential to hurt Penn State. But yes, they do have 2 receivers that are very productive. Boston is the first one.
They're very like short route slant heavy, from what I understand, which is, it kind of reminds me of that Bowling Green game. It was that, I don't know if that's fair to say, but that felt like that's kind of how Bowling Green picked Penn State apart a little bit. So I'd be curious, like for Penn State's linebackers, for example, like you gotta. Open field tackling is going to be massive this week, from what I see. You got to keep those slants limited to 4, 5, 6 yards, and can't be giving away 13 plus yards. Kind of explosive plays, all that. So to me, that's the big thing as far as containing Washington's offense. But Washington's offense, like Like they feel like they drive the ball well, but they don't convert. I don't know exactly what their red zone efficiency is and some of those things, but it feels like a team that, can move the ball, but this for some reason or another, when they get an opponent's 40, they're not able to punch.
Valley View Retirement Community's 50-plus acre campus in Big Valley, PA. Award-winning residential, personal care, skilled nursing, rehab, and memory care for older adults.
All right, now you're about to get a 30-minute breakdown of UCLA and Iowa from last night, the 20-17 game. No, I'm not. No. Obviously not. That would be awful for everybody involved. But around the Big Ten, Ohio State destroyed Purdue 45-0. Purdue at the goal line, at the 1-yard line, came away with 0 points because they missed the field goal on 4th down. So it's not. I know you don't want to be comparing yourself to Purdue, who is now 1-8, but it's not just Penn State that was stopped at the goal line there. Maryland and Oregon kickoff at 7:00. What were you going to say?
No, I was going to say, I know we're not talking about it, but speaking of goal line stands, actually, Washington has had back-to-back weeks of goal line stands.
It's
against Indiana.
It's like a virus going around now.
Yeah. So, are you the victim? Are you the one? Are you the one doing it?
Yeah,
That's the real question about these goal line stands. Hopefully, Penn State is producing them tonight.
Yeah. What else we got? You got the Michigan score, the Indiana-Michigan score,
It is.
right?
Michigan just got the ball back. It is 6-17. Indiana leads Michigan.
Ooh.
Yeah, interesting there.
How does that play out for Indiana? I know they play Ohio State. What's the best case scenario down the stretch run with Indiana, Ohio State, Oregon, and Penn State?
I mean, first off, you got to feel disrespected if you're Indiana to be 9-0 and have beat everybody how you beat them and still only be the number 8 team. That's what you call. I mean, that's like your brand. Your brand just isn't big enough. If you're any other team, like any high level team, you're the number 1 team.
Right.
But now they're 8 because of that.
Yeah.
So interesting. First off, with that, yeah. I mean, look, it's our shot at a Big Ten championship.
You got to root for Ohio State.
Yeah, Ohio State.
I
think Michigan would have to win this too. I thought.
Well,
kind of, right?
Well, so if you have a common loss and you're already ranked higher, and you both finish 11-1, neither of you are going Indiana and Penn State in this situation, and you're already the higher ranked team. That's what you're betting on, is just that the rankings are going to hold serve. Is that you have that common loss, you both have one loss, and then Ohio State rematches with Oregon, and then you just want to be third in the wash no matter what.
Right.
I don't know the rest of Indiana's schedule, but I know Ohio State is the big game on their schedule, which I think might be next week.
Yeah.
So we're going to find out pretty quickly about that and, get their first test of the season.
Yeah, and then a couple of things that really affected us. I mean, we sit at number 6 right now, and obviously you can't jump inside of obviously the top 4 teams are the teams that win the conferences that get to bye.
Yep.
But Miami just went down. They were number 4, and now number 3, Georgia, is down 10-22 to number 16, Ole Miss. So down 12 points, and Ole Miss has the ball. A little bit of trouble down there. And getting towards the end of the third quarter in that Georgia Ole Miss game. So
interesting here.
A lot of stuff going on.
I was wrong. So Indiana's schedule sets up quite favorably, where they are playing Michigan this week. Then they have a bye.
Oh.
Then they play Ohio State. And I believe that no, it is on the road. That is in Columbus. So that is as favorable as you can get to be undefeated, looking like it going into the game against Ohio State to prove that you are as good as your record says. So Penn State fans, good luck rooting for Ohio State now. That never feels good, I imagine, Landon.
No, not at all. Yeah, and Ohio State's they're basically playing 2 Big Ten championships because they have to beat Indiana to then get there, and then they have to play Oregon. So should be interesting. Yeah, gotta be some battles, and Big Ten is finally competitive. Hey, thank you. At least it's not whatever, just an awful team from the West playing a team from the East, Michigan or Ohio State.
These games matter.
They matter now. So shout out college football. I still say college football, as much as people say it's messed up now. There's money involved.
Yeah.
It is the most interesting that it has ever been, in my opinion.
Yeah, this is I bring this up because John Haversack says this on the Blue White Illustrated YouTube channel. He says Indiana Penn State will end up with the same record. Indiana should be high ranked, tougher schedule. Which somebody responds in the chat, Rob, who is a regular here, says their schedule is ranked 103rd going into this weekend. The feels, though, guys. Penn State feels like they don't deserve it, and Indiana feels like they do deserve it because Indiana normally isn't good. And there is a certain percentage of the fan base that is rooting against James Franklin. It is in my mentions all week long that they're hoping this happens. This happens every year after the loss to Ohio State. Every year that there is a group of people that start actively rooting for their team to lose so that the head coach will get fired, now, regardless of a buyout or whatever. So, let's have some perspective, I guess, is all I'm trying to say. It's the Blue White Illustrated YouTube channel, Penn State Football, Tailgate Show. Anything else here around the Big Ten that you're super interested in?
No, it should be interesting. I mean, Penn State's got to handle the rest of the way. Minnesota game earlier, I believe Minnesota might have fallen to Rutgers.
Yeah, that was the one I was watching. I was actually watching some football this afternoon, Landon.
Oh, there you go. You got some time to do that?
Yeah.
All right, good.
It was 24-16 when I saw it last on the schedule. So let me double check that.
I'm inside the top 25. Yeah, you figure that out. But I mean, nonetheless, some good stuff going on. I think that is
Rutgers beat Minnesota 26-19.
Yeah, I mean, those are those mid-level teams in the Big Ten. And anytime people are saying, hey, watch out for Washington, watch out for Minnesota. Yeah, those are the two, like I said, around that middle tier where they're not going to compete for a Big Ten championship. But if you go to their place, especially, and you're lacking, they can beat you. You've seen that with Michigan, USC, all that type of stuff. So an interesting opponent in Minnesota in a couple weeks, but we will have Purdue this coming week to beat up on, I think, probably maybe the worst team in the Big Ten, right? I would say.
Purdue?
Yeah.
Oh, without a doubt.
Yeah. I think by far the worst team in the Big Ten. So Penn State has an opportunity to go out there and kind of whoop up, really, on Purdue.
Yeah. I listen. So we're gonna get to our predictions later. I think that get right game is tonight. From what I've seen, the matchups, the schemes, the players involved, I just think the Penn State offense and defense should have a good game tonight. Are there things we haven't talked about yet that you want to get to? Because, we've been through the offense, we've been through the defense, how we normally break it down as we talk about one, then we talk about the other. But there's always things I'm like, oh, wait. Is there anything that we didn't really get to in this matchup that you want to talk about, or something else you think that is important within the structure and the kind of the meaning of this game?
No, I mean, I think honestly, it feels like a pretty basic game. You know what I mean? Like there's not a lot to this one. It feels like if you come out and you just out physical this team and you out coach them in a sense of what we've seen with Kotoniki, where guys are wide open and you're creating easy completions, especially early on for Drew Aller. That is a world you want to live in if you're Penn State. And then I guess scoring early. That'd be the biggest thing. Yeah. That's the complaint I hear from pretty much everybody. You talk about your mentions. Yeah. That is the red zone offense, that type of deal. Yeah. Making sure you get in there. And I will say that is one thing we haven't talked about. You want to talk about something? What? 3 out of 4 plays putting Vanga Yawane at wide receiver. It hurts. That is, like I said, and people know which part of it do you think is the most frustrating? The fact that you're taking an eligible receiver off the field that is not a threat to do anything other than crack block, which is what he did on all those plays, or is it that he's not at left guard when you're running up the middle? It's a double-edged sword because then it's a run pretty much. Right. And then also you don't have your best run blocking offensive lineman in the middle because you're running up the middle, and now he is, kind of in the run scheme, but didn't really block anybody. Yeah. So it's hard, and like I said, I've always been honest, and I'd say, I'm just fair. You got out-coached there. Or really, you kind of out-coached yourself, just taking your guy out of the equation. If you're going to run it up the middle, put your best guys in there, and let's go toe-to-toe. And I think Katron Allen had a good shot at it, and there was just some good tackling from that Ohio State team. Yeah. And we were not able to get a push up front. Well, I guarantee you that offensive line has been challenged now. And trust me, Franklin, all of them probably said to them, hey, we got to get back on track. This thing is on you guys, and come into this game with a chip on your shoulder. I think the Penn State offensive line room is strong. It's a different room that we know from years past. Yeah, obviously, and this is a younger group. Yeah. I think this is a younger group that we have because it started off so well with Drew being protected, us rushing for over 200 yards in every single game for like 5 weeks. It was like, oh, this offensive line is great. but it's still not. I mean, we had a first and third round draft pick on last year that we lost.
From a starting perspective, they're young, right? Because Drew Shelton's been around a while. People saw him as a freshman, but really this is his first time actually starting with like real ball, where he's got the offense was tailored around him not getting beat a little bit in 2022 when he had to come onto the field. At least that's how I viewed a lot of what was going on there. And then obviously Anthony Donko's a redshirt freshman and Nick Dawkins a first-time starter. But you do have some of those older guys in the middle, at least from that perspective. But I agree with you. I just wanted to clarify that point of like, these are young starters out there.
Yeah, I guess experience is the word. Starting experience is what I should have said. But yes, it is just overall these guys haven't gelled. And when you are a position group, and I've talked about this, 5 guys have to move as one for those big plays to work.
Yeah.
It is hard when you don't have a lot of time together. When a line plays together for 2 years straight, when you see Michigan and what they were able to do, I mean, that's just chemistry. And that's when you know you can move a guy from point A to point B against his will.
Here's something else that I think is kind of part of the conversation, part of the narrative today. And Emery's 1234 here on the YouTube channel says Warren's superhero jump would have been good too. Yeah, I mean, I don't think any of this is unfair Monday morning quarterbacking. We were saying it literally immediately after it happened. But this offense is hard to watch at times. I guess my football, you want to win. The tactics, the X's and O's are super fun. But it is a TV show as well. And when you are putting together a 16-play drive that goes for 6.5 minutes and you end with a field goal, that's hard to swallow. Like, that is just, it's hard to watch where you're not getting the explosive plays and you're not even paying it off with a touchdown in recent weeks. Obviously, this is all reactionary to last week, but they have not put together consistently explosive performances. Think about the UCLA game, where they didn't do a whole lot until halftime, and then right at the 2-minute warning, they're like, okay, we're going to throw the ball now, and then that was fun, and then you go to halftime. I like football to be fun, and like I like passing because passing is exciting, but at the same time, running can be exciting, Landon, where you rip off explosive runs. Do you think, I know you're getting to this side of it for the first time after being in it like 100%. Do you feel that way at all, or is that just like a fan person that watches football sort of thing?
No, I mean, I think think about the Illinois game where we rushed for 240 and only threw for 125 yards. That feeling of like we just destroyed them. Like we just went out there and it was man on man and every guy on our team won, honestly, on both sides of the football. And I think from what we have seen from Washington up front on both sides, we have an opportunity. And now obviously you have to be a little hesitant because you went into last week and you're like, oh, Ohio State's banged up offensive line. They're on their whatever, putting their left guard at left tackle, bringing in a young guy. This is going to be somewhere where we can, gain a little bit of swagger, get up on them a little bit.
Right.
And it was not.
It was
pretty much the opposite. That was their strength.
Oh, my gosh. I remember after the game thinking, like, they didn't even run to the left side, and Gus Johnson gets to talk about, they rebuilt this offensive line.
Hold on. Can we talk about someone said that Donovan Jackson was playing his way into like a big – and I'm not trashing Donovan Jackson.
Yeah.
But it was like really like 2 sacks on Abdul, and you're talking about he's like playing his way into some money. I'm like, all right, like calm down.
Yeah.
They have been Fox has been so biased. I'm sorry, of Gus Johnson.
Listen,
and what they say after the game.
I was talking to my wife about this. They are the Cowboys because Big Noon was there at Purdue for a 45-0 game. It's not like that they're doing this for every great Big Ten game. It's for the biggest TV audience, and that's wherever Ohio State is this year. So, he's just the home play-by-play announcer for Ohio State this year. So, of course, he watches all their games. He knows all their names at this point. He doesn't have to learn any of the new names.
New nicknames, though.
New nicknames.
Great. Every week.
Oh, my God. I wonder how much that I wonder how much Anthony Kolnicki regrets telling him the Zamboni story.
Oh,
when you're called the Big Zamboni.
He said it at least 10 times.
Every
time.
There's nothing that Gus Johnson won't lean into.
Oh, I'll never forget after UCLA when the result was we finished the game and it wasn't a dominant win, but what were we 27 to 13, something like that.
Yeah.
And it was UCLA got better today. I swear to God, that is what the broadcast said. It was the craziest thing. I was like, is that actually what this Fox broadcast just said? All right, that's cool.
Yeah.
So
Rob puts it in the chat. He says 28-yard runs equals one great game. Yeah, I think that they got to talk about that angle of it without acknowledging the fact that the rebuilt side of the line was the left side, and they ran for 8 yards between the left guard and the left tackle. That side of the line that was rebuilt didn't work. That's the most damning thing, is Penn State couldn't stop a team that only ran to the right. But we're talking about Penn State, and we did it. We did it ourselves, Landon.
You can't not, T. Frank.
All this week, the only thing anyone wanted to talk about, we watched the film. We're breaking these things down. We're trying to understand who Washington is. And the only thing Penn State fans really tuned into this week is what happened at the Ohio State game. And here we are, an hour and a half before kickoff, and we're still talking about the Ohio State game.
Yeah, I think it's on most of the fans' mind. Hopefully it is not on the players' mind at all, T. Frank.
So here's another thing I want to talk to you about from that perspective of, what's on a player's mind, what's on the coach's mind. I have this theory, and I want to run it by you. Coaches have to maintain that standard of you can't let one loss become two, because back in 2017 when that happened, or maybe when it happened in 2021, those players had to learn that lesson. These are new players who were not on those teams except for maybe a handful of those guys. So the coach has to say that publicly, even if it's not a problem, which then allows the media and the fans to think it's a problem, even if it isn't, because a coach kind of like, we need to win every game, we need to win every rep, no exceptions, even though they don't really think that. They just have to have that standard set. Right. Is that crazy to think that?
No, I mean, like, coach speak is obviously it's a very big thing. And that's why
people eat it up. People buy that stuff when it talks about trap games and don't let one loss become two. We spent so much time talking about that this week. And I'm like, is this relevant at all?
I mean, I think just a little bit, maybe.
All right.
But also at the same time, if you are coming off an emotional loss, if you're Penn State, it can creep into the next week and it will sneak up on you. And I'll tell you, like you said, we're always honest. The energy out here is not the same as it was last week at all. And I get that. I mean, we went from an undefeated season and looking at a shot at number one team in the nation if you go and beat Oregon in the Big Ten championship to now where we are now. But there's still a great opportunity at hand here. There's still a home playoff game clearly in your grasp if you win these next 4 games if you're Penn State. So you just have to have the leadership. You have to have the coaching to make sure those guys stay on track.
Yeah.
And they're doing what they need to do this week to get ready for Washington.
I will say, too, with the crowd tonight, it is different when you've got to get 8 hours of tailgating into 45 minutes and you kind of everything gets a little tuned up, as opposed to you can come and hang out. It was 50 degrees, beautiful today. People were here. They are leisurely tailgating, playing cornhole and stump, and now they're walking into the game. There's a ton of people out here. There are a lot of people filing into the stadium. Of course, we'll come up with our final predictions and our X factors, and also we'll get you the availability report. That's all coming up next on the Penn State Football Tailgate Show on 99.5 The Bus, 107.5 The Bus, and Bigfoot Country Legends, and of course on the Blue White Illustrated YouTube channel.
Let's get into our game predictions, and let's talk about what we think is going to happen for the Nittany Lions on the football field. I'll let you go first and give your score prediction and generally how you think the game will play out.
I think Washington can keep it close. I think this might be a situation where you find yourself in a UCLA type situation where, yes, there should be elements there, or should be avenues there where you can get big plays. There should be all this stuff, but we haven't really seen it come through. So I think that's tough to tough to handle if you're Penn State, because where have the points gone? Were the points there to begin with? I think that's, we see all this, the flashy stuff and the cool things when you open up against West Virginia, but how do you sustain that? And how do you improve on that? And it's been hit and miss. So I think that we might be in for another type of those games. I am frantically trying to figure out what my score prediction was. 27-16, which actually not far off from the UCLA game. Yeah. I don't know that you can look at this Penn State team and say that they're going to be able to put up a ton of points. There's more opportunity there. I think there's just more space when you play against a defense that's not Ohio State. There's just more space here. So that helps Liam Clifford. That helps Khalil Dinkins. That helps those little throws, those digs across the middle that Drew is so good at throwing. The little extra window can make all the difference there. You got to go out, you got to finish. And just after last week, just not a ton of confidence in that offense, but 27 points is the new, 17 points. So we'll go with that.
Ryan, what do you think?
Well, they allowed 31 points to Indiana, 40 to Iowa. 24 Washington State. Those are all their losses. 21 to Rutgers. So my prediction, I think Penn State can get to 30 points. Now, with that said, I think it's going to be late that they get some of those points. I do think going into halftime, this will be closer than probably fans hope. And my main thing I'm wondering is, do we see that nervous energy that we sometimes see in Beaver Stadium, right? You're coming off the loss to Ohio State. Everyone's expecting you to make a playoff game. You got a couple games here that can be tricky. Obviously, they've done well against Maryland. Purdue's not anything special, but this game in Minnesota, these are their two ones that I think everybody's going to have circled as if there's going to be a slip up, it would be these two. So if the offense doesn't get out to a fast start, is there that little bit of nervousness that we've seen sometimes in Beaver Stadium, and sometimes that does impact how these college kids play. So I do think Penn State kind of does what we've seen all year. Maybe a little bit of a slow start, takes it up a notch in the third quarter. We're talking about maybe a 13-10 kind of game, maybe in the end of the half, and then Penn State takes it in the second half and eventually covers. But I'll tell you this, I wouldn't bet the spread if you want to play this game this week. I think there's too many variables that would worry me from playing 13 points.
They should simply run the pick six play for the third week in a row. That would really help them. I think
that would help.
Yeah, get that nice boost to start the game too.
Maybe
they help last week
early.
Venga, former Washington commit. Maybe you throw in the ball this week.
Yeah.
I'm going to speak it into existence.
Revenge game.
Yeah, no,
just don't put them in motion 4 times in a row.
Yeah, I think so. That that just interesting that James Franklin says a lot in those opening press conferences, and one of the things, he will not outright criticize any of his coaches until after they're gone. But he said, the heavy formation is great until you can't do anything with it because everyone's, stacking the box, and it's not just those plays necessarily that you saw at the goal line, but it's also in the middle of the field. Penn State is number.
Here's the expert predictions for today's game.
Welcome back to the Tailgate Show. Our predictions here to end our show, but be the springboard into the next one. If you're listening here on the YouTube channel, we will have more coverage at bluewhiteillustrated.com. Of course, Landon's going to have content on his channel this weekend, and you'll have the official pregame show coming up next on 99.5 The Bus, and then the call of the game from Steve and Jack. But Landon, we've talked a lot about this game. You say it's pretty simple. You feel like it's a pretty straightforward game. So what is your prediction for the score?
Yeah, give me Penn State 38, Washington 17.
All right.
I think this is a game where Penn State, it might be a little bit close at first. I think we can break away if we shut down their run game and start to take advantage of other opportunities dominating their defensive line up front. For our passing game, let Drew Aller air it out a little bit, but also get Nick Singleton and Katron Allen back going for this Penn State offense because we need them.
I think I'm struggling because I agree with you. My prediction is 35-17. I've given them too many points all year long, and I knew that I was doing that. I think the talent is capable of these things. They haven't reached that potential yet. At some point, it is what it is. People have asked me this week, do they get to a level where they can have elite production from the offense? If Nick Singleton doesn't recover from his ailment to the point where he's more physical and powerful through contact, and he can generate those explosive plays, I don't know that that's true. I struggle with where do they get better? And that's always what I'm looking for, Landon, is how do they get better? What are the paths to where they reach their full potential? But we're in November now. And yet I still think they can put up 35 points on this team. I have 35-17. I also think this is a big Amari Evans game. We haven't seen those shots deep because teams have been parking safeties or corners over the top of him. Ohio State was hedging so hard. They knew exactly what he was going to run because, as we pointed out every week, there's a deep post to Amari Evans when he lines up in the slot. You get it's a drinking game for me and the fans. I don't drink during the game. I don't drink when I'm doing my work. But I mean, I just say that on the message board, Amari Evans post, drink. Well, guess who knew that? Caleb Downs, because they were hedging towards the inside of the field to not let him run those plays. This team plays cover 3 and cover 1. So what's up? I do think that if they play what they play and they come out and say, hey, we're going to run this because, we're the New England Patriots of Washington, then Amari Evans should have at least one deep shot in this game, and they should hit it because one thing we haven't talked about, they don't have a good pass rush. Washington does not have a pass rush. They have those big bodies up front, but they don't get after the quarterback unless they blitz or they send pressure. Aller's been really good under pressure this year. He's done a great job extending plays. I think he's got to extend some plays and I almost said chuck it deep. Almost said chuck it deep. But yeah, I think that's the game. You have to air it out in this game.
You do, yeah. Only 2 sacks in the last 3 games, so not yet. They're not really influencing that opposing quarterback too much at all. And Drew Adler, if he can sit back there, I think this is a game where the offensive line can give him 4 to 5 seconds to pass the ball. And let's get surgical. Let's get the ball to Trey Wallace. Get some deep shots to him.
Yeah.
But overall, get him involved. That intermediate passing game to Trey Wallace has been really successful this year.
Yeah.
And then obviously, let's get Tyler Warren his carries early and often. That has been something that Andy Kotonicki has put an emphasis on, is obviously getting him involved, but getting him involved on the first drive. A lot of times, getting 2 to 3 touches on that first drive. Let's see what he schemes up today for this Penn State offense. Should be fun.
I think, listen, Tyler Warren is a great player. You need to get him the football. But the most explosive tight end is not a receiver. You know, you've got Gronk, you got Travis Kelce, you've got Hall of Famers. And Tyler Warren is one of the best tight ends in college football. But receivers are just different, Landon. Like, I think they need to get Trey Wallace involved early in the game. I think they need to feed him some of those passes, get him involved, create and establish some threats on the perimeter of the defense. So you can't do what you said of close the field in and play within 10 yards of the line of scrimmage. That to me is a big part of this game. Is if they can't run the ball, I want to see them pivot and dominate as a passing offense. Finally unlock these things, because I just think it's there. I think, you know, Aller loves that deep dig on the backside of plays. He throws it blindfolded. Sometimes he throws it to the other team. Most of the time he throws it to his guy on time and on target. I think that's there all day in this game. So I guess that's why I'm leaning so heavy into the passing game. X factors for us. We got a couple minutes left. X factors in this game. I'm going to give you one, and I'm going to give this one to you. Anthony Donko and the way he played last week. Do you think he can take that next step towards recovery and maybe open up some of those holes for the run game?
Yeah, I think you can. This is a defensive line that has a multiple fronts, so that means they might be in an odd front, they might be in an even front, but nonetheless, I think is an opportunity to move some guys off the ball. So I will also say Nick Singleton is, I think, a player that when he is dynamic for this Penn State offense, they are dangerous. And when Nick Singleton is dormant, this offense takes a step down from what it is able to do from an explosive level and just a run game as a whole.
Yeah.
So I think Nick Singleton is crucial to getting this run game back today, getting it to be that thing you can depend on, you can lean on. If you're James Franklin and Andy Kotonicki, you say on 2nd and 6, okay, we're going to keep chugging away and sustain 12-play drives and finish it off with a touchdown in the end zone.
Yeah. I would love it if they could just at some point, please end the suffering. There have been a couple times. One of the few things I've been critical of Aller is, like, I feel like he could have ended a couple of those drives a little bit earlier if he had just thrown the ball that was there, but he was trying to be safe in the red zone, not throw a turnover. I understand that, but at the same time, he has the ability to go out and get those plays. And again, I just want to see that development. Defensively, a guy, very quick, we got less than a minute here. Zion Tracy, his development, I think, has been really big. Cam Miller's been getting better. That has been the plan to unlock Jalen Reed, as those two guys have been inverting with Jalen Reed playing him at the line. Do you see anything there that is going to be important in the matchup here with about 30 seconds left?
Yeah, I think Washington and Will Rogers, they've shown they will pass the ball. They will throw the ball for 40 times in a game if they need to. So obviously you have to have Zion Tracy. He has to be on his P's and Q's. Jay Reed has to be in and around the line of scrimmage.
We will be back with more the official Tailgate show here on the 99.5 The Bus, 107.5 The Bus. We have the official pregame show coming up next. I'm Thomas Rankar, Landon Tengwall. We'll talk to you next week.